Hi, everyone. My name is Alessandra Vienbachs, and I'm a current MD-PhD trainee at UCSF. And today I'm going to give you a talk called So You Want to Become a Physician Scientist. And with this talk today, I really have three main learning objectives for you, with the first being that I want to give you an opportunity to hear about one journey to becoming a physician scientist by sharing a little bit about my path towards becoming an MD-PhD trainee, with the hope that maybe some of the decisions that I navigated or the things that I considered along the way may resonate with you. I also want to give you a better understanding of the physician scientist career path generally. Specifically, I want to give you a better understanding of the training involved in becoming a physician scientist and give you a better understanding of some of the career opportunities available to physician scientists once they complete their training. And so with that, I really want to tell you a little bit about my journey and how I got to where I am today. I grew up in a small town called Bolton, Massachusetts, with a population of about 5,000 people. It's located about an hour outside of Boston. And I grew up with not a single physician or a single scientist in my family. And so becoming a physician or becoming a scientist was not really something that I considered growing up. What I think I tried to do as I was exploring different career paths is I just followed where my interests led me. And as I started to go through the grades and take different classes, where my interests and skills increasingly led me was towards the sciences. I think I was first really interested in chemistry for its ability to explain natural phenomenon. And as I took AP biology in high school, I think I absolutely fell in love. I really admired how elegant biology was, and I think I was fascinated by how evolution had just come up with these perfectly imperfect solutions to biological problems, and how by studying different biological systems, we could have an increased understanding of how our body worked and translate that directly to developing better approaches for medicine and for treating patients. And so as I, went through high school and took AP biology and my AP classes, I think my interest in science really started to solidify. And I was really lucky that at this point I had an incredibly supportive high school that was really dedicated towards nurturing me as a potential future scientist. And this is really important because, as I mentioned, I didn't really have any physicians or scientists in my family or really around me. And so I just didn't know what career opportunities were available to people like me who were interested in biology. And so this internship allowed me to work in a basic science lab under the mentorship of Dr. May El-Mala. Dr. May El-Mala is a pediatric pulmonologist who runs a basic science lab that studies gene therapies for the potential treatment of familial forms of amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. And my interest in biology really increased a lot through this experience because while we know a lot about biology, we certainly don't know everything. And this made me even more excited about potentially contributing to understanding biology more in the future. And I think this is a Carl Sagan quote, but science is really much less a body of knowledge and much more of a way of thinking about the world around us. And nothing really highlights this more than getting firsthand experience doing research at the cutting edge of biology. Additionally, Dr. Mayomalo was able to share with me a little bit about her day-to-day life as a physician scientist. And I think because of this, my first exposure to science and medicine was sort of one and the same. Instead of viewing science and medicine as two separate disciplines, I started to view it as two separate ends of a larger spectrum, where you can sort of take this understanding of basic biology and pathophysiology of disease, and then translate that into having a better understanding of clinical problems and potential new avenues for therapeutics. And I loved everything about this experience, so much so that I continued to volunteer in the lab throughout my junior year of high school, and then I continued on my senior year. And because of this, I ultimately left high school having some decent understanding that I wanted to become a physician scientist in some way, shape, or form. Even though I didn't really have the words for it at the time, I just knew I wanted to do exactly what Dr. Mayel Mala did. And so I really credit her for my initial decision to pursue a career in science and medicine in college and beyond. And I'm really grateful that I had this early exposure to science, and eternally grateful to Dr. Amala in particular, who to let me in the lab as a junior in high school. And this is actually a picture of me as a junior in high school on the very last day of my internship in the lab. And, so I left high school and I started my undergraduate career at the University of Chicago, where I started out having some idea that I wanted to pursue a career in medicine or science. But I wanted to take the first year of my college experience to sort of explore what else was out there, because while I knew I loved biology, I also had a lot of other interests. And so I took this time to take classes in philosophy and art history and calculus. And I really just enjoyed learning so many different things in college. And this was a really important part of my college journey, because never again in life will you have such an incredible opportunity to pursue whatever your interests are. And so while I did a lot of academic exploration, I also did a lot of personal exploration, and I got to try new hobbies and new sports. And I even joined the college cheer team, which is not something I did prior to coming to college. And this is a picture of me at my very first college football game as a cheerleader. And so I took this first year of college just to sort of explore and grow and get to know myself as a learner and as a person, because the transition from high school to college is a really big deal, and so much growth happens during that period. And at the end of my first year of college, I knew that I loved science still, and that it was still something I wanted to do. And at that point, as I started my second year, I knew that it was time for me to get back in the lab and get back into research. And so through some degree of searching and some degree of pure luck, I ended up in the lab of Dr. Tatiana Golovkina. And this was incredibly lucky, because two really important things happened for me during my time in this lab. The first of which is that I started to grow as an independent scientist. And my growth in this domain only made me more excited about this career path and more confident in my abilities in my future. And it made me really dedicated to incorporating science in my career in the future, even though I knew I wanted to do medicine as well. And I really credit a lot of my growth in this domain to Dr. Golovkina, who was an incredibly dedicated mentor to me as an undergrad and actually continues to be a mentor to me to this day. And I'm really thankful for that. She had so much confidence in my abilities, I think way more so than I did at the time. And she had incredibly high expectations for me. And I always felt really inspired to bring the best version of myself to lab every single day. And I really credit her for so much of the growth that happened for me during my time in her lab. The second thing that happened for me in this lab is I discovered my niche in biology. Biology is such an incredibly broad field with so many different subfields in it. And I really found my place in a domain called host microbe interactions, which is a field that I continue to be passionate about and study to this day. In Dr. Golovkina's lab, she focused a lot on understanding how hosts respond to infections with types of viruses called retroviruses. An example of a retrovirus you may have heard of is HIV. Specifically, she was interested in studying retroviruses that infect mice, like mouse mammary tumor virus. And the project that I primarily worked on in her lab was focused on understanding what the genetic factors are that influence whether or not a mouse is able to make antivirus antibodies when they're infected with retroviruses as neonates. And I found that I really enjoyed the constant dialogue and perpetual arms race between the host immune system and the microbes themselves. And I think this was only really further solidified for me during the COVID pandemic, where this area of biology was sort of coming to light on a global stage. And I really knew that I wanted to be on the front lines of both medicine and research, as the physicians and scientists during the COVID pandemic were doing at the time. And at this point, with some encouragement from Dr. Golovkina and some of my other scientific mentors at U Chicago, I started to really consider and become aware of the MD-PhD combined path, where I'd be able to pursue both my medical degree and pursue my PhD. And I, started to consider that this might be something that I would pursue in the future, but I wasn't 100% sure how much of my time I really wanted to dedicate to science versus medicine. And I was really debating between doing an MD PhD or doing just a medical degree with some additional scientific training in the future. And because I wasn't 100% sure what the best path for me was, I decided to take a little bit of time off after graduating from college. And so I ended up working for 2 years in the lab of Dr. Michael Fischbach after graduating from college. And so I moved all the way from Chicago, Illinois to Palo Alto, California, where I spent 2 years at Stanford at part of Dr. Michael Fischbach's lab. And again, I consider myself really lucky to have ended up in this position because I was able to be mentored by Dr. Fischbach and some of the postdocs in the lab. Dr. Fischbach is an incredible visionary, and he's a really thoughtful scientist who had a lot of really great ideas about where his discoveries and contributions fell in the grand scheme of biology. And he was really astute at deciding what problems were worth working on at the time. And so I learned a lot about, problem choice from him in his lab. And on a more day-to-day basis, I was mentored by an incredible postdoc named Dr. Erin Chen, who herself was a physician scientist who had completed an MD-PhD training program. So I was able to talk to her a lot about how she navigated the decision about whether she wanted to pursue an MD or a PhD or a combined MD-PhD program. And I got to learn a lot about what that decision was like for her and why she ultimately chose what she did. For her, Dr. Chen wanted to focus a lot more of her time on research. And actually, at the time that I was in the lab, Dr. Chen was in the process of applying for faculty positions herself, where she would become a professor. And she's actually currently a professor at MIT. And so, she moved on from her postdoc after I left the lab, but I got to learn a little bit more about, what the journey was like after graduating from an MD PhD program. And as I was sort of reflecting on my own priorities, I determined that similar to Dr. Chen, I wanted to pursue a career that was a little bit more focused on research while still maintaining a smaller clinical practice. And so she was really influential in my decision to pursue a combined MD PhD program just like she did. And she was really encouraging along the way and really helped me through the application process and ultimately being accepted to an MD PhD program. Scientifically, during these years, I continued to be really interested in host microbe interactions. And working with Dr. Chen, I was able to see how some of her clinical practice informed some of the science that she was doing at the bench, which is another one of the huge benefits of the combined MD-PhD program. Dr. Chen was clinically trained as a dermatologist, and so she was interested in the skin. Specifically, she was interested in a type of skin bacteria called Staphylococcus epidermidis, which is a type of bacteria that lives in the skin of essentially all humans without typically causing a lot of disease. She was interested in understanding how the host immune system could see the bacteria in the context of the skin and how it could potentially defend the host from any sort of infection, and how this immune response could potentially be manipulated for therapeutic use. She had this really cool project where she actually engineered Staphylococcus epidermidis to express pieces of cancer on its surface. And the immune system would see that piece of cancer in the context of the bacteria and then respond to that piece of cancer like it was a foreign invader every time it saw that piece of cancer. And so the immune system was able to mount an immune response against the cancer no matter where it was in the body after seeing that piece of cancer in the context of the bacteria originally on the skin. And so what happens is that the bacteria sort of acts like this live biotherapeutic vaccine in the skin, where it's just living without causing any disease. And so this project was really cool and really cutting edge. And I learned so much and grew a lot scientifically and professionally during this experience. And I was really inspired by so much of the work that Dr. Fischbach and Dr. Chen and so many of the other scientists in the lab were doing. And I got even more excited about pursuing really translational research and doing high impact cutting edge things in the future. And so, like I said, after these 2 years in Dr. Fischbach's lab, I ultimately decided to move on and pursue an MD-PhD combined program as well. And so I moved not too far away from Stanford, just up to San Francisco to join the UCSF Medical Scientist Training Program, which is a combined, fully funded 8-year MD-PhD program. And I recently just completed my first 2 years of medical school, where I became really passionate about caring for patients with autoimmune and infectious diseases, which is perhaps not that surprising given my scientific interests in host microbe interactions. And I'm considering pursuing a career in either internal medicine or dermatology, or maybe I'll discover something entirely new along the way. I'm also really passionate about medical education and mentorship. And I do ultimately hope to pursue a career similar to Dr. Erin Chen's, where I will become a professor and get the opportunity to not only do basic science research and have a clinical practice, but also teach and mentor the next generation of physicians and scientists like my mentors have done for me. And I talked a lot about, where I've been so far, but I still do have a very long way to go in my journey. And so I figured I'd do a little bit of a recap about what training I've done so far and where I still have to go in the future to give you a better understanding of what the physician scientist career path and training looks like if you do decide to pursue an MD-PhD program. And so, as I mentioned, I did my 4 years of college at the University of Chicago, followed by 2 years of post-bac research at Stanford, and I recently completed my first 2 years of medical school at UCSF. The way that my program is structured is that after completing those first 2 years of medical school, I will pursue my PhD, and that's where I am currently. The PhD phase lasts about 3 to 5 years, and during this time, you're dedicating your full efforts to research. After completing my PhD, I will return to medical school for 2 more years. After graduating from medical school, I plan on completing my residency training. And residency training really differs in length depending on what type of physician you hope to be in the future. And it lasts anywhere from 3 to 5 or more years. If you do something like internal medicine, that residency program lasts about 3 years, versus it can be a lot longer if you pursue more of a surgical specialty. And some surgical specialties like neurosurgery can last as long as 7 years for residency training. And so residency is another significant portion of your training. After completing my residency training, I hope to do 2 or more years as a postdoc. And the length of the postdoc really varies depending on your project, but it can be another 2 to 6 years. And then after completing my postdoc research, I hope to transition into a role as a professor where I will have my own research group and continue to mentor the next generation of physicians and scientists. This is a really long training path, and so you can do the math on, what all these years add up to. I personally choose not to do that math because it is a really significant number, but there's a lot of life and a lot of growth that happens while you're still in training. And so there's just a lot of opportunity to explore and, find what feels good for you and do a lot of reflection during this training program. And so you may wonder, with all of that training, what does a physician scientist actually do? And the short answer is really anything that they want to do. But the long answer is that, there are really a couple of different career paths that have historically been chosen by people who have done either an MD PhD combined program or just an MD with a significant amount of research time. I think the most traditional path historically has been to become a professor at a university or research institute where a lot of their time is dedicated to research, with some time dedicated to the clinic. And the exact split between research and clinical time really varies, but historically it's been that these professors will spend about 80% of time doing research, and then the remaining 20% of their time will be dedicated towards having clinical practice. After completing their training, some physician scientists may decide that ultimately they want to dedicate more of their time towards clinical practice. And so they may pursue more clinically focused careers as pure clinicians in hospitals, clinics, or private practice settings. Some may find their calling in the biotech sphere as a biotech founder or leader, where they can have an incredibly impactful role in translating basic science discoveries into clinical trials, and then ultimately getting that new therapeutic out to patients. And so biotech is a really great space for doing translational work. Some may even find that public service is really rewarding, and they can help inform public policy or work as leaders in governmental organizations such as the CDC or the NIH. Some may work as consultants for biotech companies or VCs or private equity firms that do health-related work. And some may wear a variety of hats at different points in their careers, because a lot of these paths are not necessarily mutually exclusive. Below, I've listed a few different physician scientists whose work that I really admire and I think who exemplify the diversity of career paths that physician scientists can have. For example, Dr. William Kaelin is a physician scientist who studies cancer, and he's had a long and distinguished career in academia with a lab at Harvard Medical School, where he studies tumor suppressor proteins. And he actually won the Nobel Prize for his work in contributing to our understanding of how the body senses and responds to oxygen levels by studying how tumors can manipulate their blood supplies. Dr. Howard Chang is a dermatologist and geneticist who has had an incredibly long and successful career as a professor of genetics and dermatology at Stanford, where he contributed so much to our understanding of different topics in genetics, ranging from long non-coding RNAs to extra chromosomal DNAs. And he actually recently transitioned out of academia into more of the biotech sphere since he took a leadership role at Amgen. Dr. Kakis is a physician scientist who founded a startup called Ultragenics, where he's dedicated to developing enzyme replacement therapies for patients with rare diseases. And his goal was really to get those treatments to patients and their families at low or no cost to them. So he's doing incredibly important work as well. And of course, if you were around during the COVID-19 pandemic, you probably heard so much about Dr. Anthony Fauci, who many years ago did a lot of basic science research on trying to understand the immune response to HIV and other viral infections. But he's now transitioned into having an incredibly distinguished role as a public servant, where he's really been at the forefront of the public health response to epidemics and pandemics like HIV and COVID-19. And so I hope the careers of these physician scientists have inspired you to maybe one day join their ranks as a physician scientist and pursue any one of these career paths, or maybe something entirely different, depending on what your interests and skills are. And I hope throughout this presentation, I've started to allude to some of the wonderful things that you can do as a physician scientist, but I really want to lay out why you should consider becoming a physician scientist in the future and highlight some of the really great things that I love about this career path. For me, the most amazing thing about becoming a physician scientist is that as you train as a physician, you have the incredible privilege of caring for patients directly. And in my opinion, it's one of the greatest privileges in the world to be able to be there for someone in some of the most vulnerable and scary moments of their life, and to be able to play a really important role in helping them and their families navigate that. It's an incredible privilege and really impactful work. I think, if you're interested in working with patients, this is a really unique part about becoming a physician scientist, as opposed to pursuing just a PhD or more of a research-focused career only. Having the scientist role as well really gives you an opportunity to not only care for patients today, but also contribute to the generation of new knowledge that hopefully in the future will contribute to improved therapeutics and improved outcomes for patients in the future. And so not only can you take care of patients today, you can also make an impact in the lives of patients in the future long after your clinical career has ended. Additionally, as a physician scientist, you're in a really unique position where you have both clinical and scientific expertise. And so you can sort of help bridge the gap between new scientific discoveries and patient care. And it's pretty rare that people have both of these areas of expertise. And sometimes there can be a little bit of a disconnect between what's happening at the bench and what's really needed in the clinic. And so as a physician scientist, you can sort of help navigate those conversations and maybe speed up translation of new discoveries into clinical practice. Um, as I sort of started to mention in the previous slide, there's also really unparalleled career flexibility. You can have any sort of career you'd like, and you can mix and match the ratio of being a physician to being a scientist, and you can really adapt your career to whatever suits your needs and your skill set. And you can also transition between different roles in different sectors of the workforce at different points in your life, depending on what your priorities and interests are. And that's a really big perk of being a physician scientist, is you get to have that career flexibility because you have these two really in-demand skill sets. Additionally, I think as a person, I love learning, and lifelong learning is such a crucial part of being both a physician and a scientist. They tell us in medical school that about 50% of the things you learn in medical school will actually be out of date by the time you're practicing medicine, because medicine is just changing so rapidly. And that's also very true about science. There's always a new technology, and there's always, new rules being written, and we're always changing and rewriting what we thought we knew about science. And when you pursue projects, they'll often take you down unexpected routes where you'll have to become an expert in something totally different and unexpected. And I think that's an incredible part of being both a physician and a scientist. There's just so much learning that you get to do for the rest of your life. And I think that's really cool. Additionally, there's a lot of leadership potential. You can really make important impacts in different fields, whether that's being a leader in biotech or being a leader in more of a governmental organization or leading a lab group. There's a lot of opportunities for leadership potential. And with that, I want to end this talk by giving maybe some advice that I wish I had heard when I was in your shoes, maybe in high school or early in college, starting to navigate where I wanted to go in the future. And as with any advice, feel free to take whatever resonates with you and leave whatever doesn't. But the first thing that I want to encourage you to do is to follow your interests and not necessarily the path that you feel like you should take. Particularly in medicine, there's a lot of dialogue when you're a pre-medical student about what you should do, what extracurriculars would be beneficial for your med school application, and what classes you should take. And, they encourage you to get X number of clinical hours or X number of publications before applying to medical school. But my 2 cents is that I really believe if you follow your interests, you'll get to where you need to be. And so if your interest is being in the lab, then pursue the lab. If your interest is also, joining the cheer team, even though that's not directly applicable to medicine, you'll still learn teamwork skills that are valuable down the line. And so I think you should enjoy what you do and really follow your interests. However, when it comes to finding those interests, I think you shouldn't be afraid to say yes to trying new things, but more importantly, don't be afraid to say no. As a person, I'm very much a perfectionist. And I think this is actually really common among people who choose to pursue a career in medicine. And so it can be very nerve-wracking to pursue hobbies or interests that are new to you. And, you're not quite sure that you'll be good at. So I encourage you to not be afraid to try new things and to not be afraid to fail at something new to you. But on the other hand, it may be even more important to learn to say no when you try something new and you ultimately decide that this isn't of interest to you or that this opportunity isn't helping you meet your goals at the time. And so I think you shouldn't be afraid to transition out of that and continue to find what does feel right for you. As you're sort of starting to find new opportunities, particularly in college, a lot of things are not posted online, and I'm still very much learning the skill in graduate school, but I think you should start to get comfortable just sending cold emails. Professors and physicians are very busy people, and it may be really hard to navigate what opportunities and possibilities are out there. But if you see someone and you really like their work, I think you should always feel free to drop them an email and say, hey, my name is so-and-so, and I'm really interested in your research on XYZ. Are you looking for undergraduate volunteers? Or I'm a pre-medical student and I'm interested in shadowing surgery. I was wondering if you had any availability for an undergraduate student to come and shadow you in clinic one day. And a lot of times you won't get a response to these cold emails because professors and physicians are so busy. But sometimes you will get a response, and it can be really exciting seeing where those cold emails will take you. I hope this came through as I was sharing a little bit about my journey, but I really encourage you to find strong mentors. And this was something that I saw in a New England Journal of Medicine, where it described mentors as being someone who has more imagination about your future than you do. And this really rang true for me with regard to all of the mentors that I've mentioned in this presentation. From Dr. Almala to Dr. Golovkina to Dr. Chen and Dr. Fishbach, all of these people have had incredible roles in shaping who I am and who I hope to be in the future. And so they've, played incredible roles and really believed in me as I was sort of navigating my own journey, and they really instilled a lot of confidence in me. And so I really encourage you to find your own mentors who have more imagination about your future than you do, and will really help to get you, where you hope to be in the future. And lastly, the physician scientist career path has a lot of delayed gratifications, and training is very, very long, and so much life and so much growth happens while you're still in training. And so I think it's really crucial to enjoy that journey at least as much as the destination. It can be really easy to get caught up in the mindset of thinking, well, I'm in college now, and, once I get into med school, then I'll be happy. Or when you're in med school, you'll start to think, well, I'm in med school now, but I really need to match residency. And once I match residency, then I'll be happy. But I think, you should really not be afraid to enjoy the journey and where you're at in the moment. It's always important to think, about the next steps and how to get there, but it's also really important to live in the now. You should always, be looking for new hobbies and enjoying whatever it is that you're doing. And you should, spend time with your loved ones and find, whatever fills your cup along the way, because it's really important that you take care of yourself and enjoy this journey. And with that, that is all I have to share with you today, but I hope this was helpful in helping you to understand the physician scientist career path a little better. And I hope that, you're inspired to potentially pursue a career in science and medicine yourself in the future. Um, and I thank you so much for listening to this presentation, and I really wish you the best on your journey, wherever it takes you.